When you have a divorce, the question was, who am I now? My brain was just getting rewired and I was opening my mind up to a lot of possibilities that I had been closed off to. I just went to Spotify and it's like pregnancy. And then up pops Freebirth Society podcast. I had no idea what Freebirth was. So I started listening to the stories. It cracked my heart open and it was another veil lifted from my eyes. We decided what we have to do is move into an RV and go travel. We liquidate everything, sell my house, sell everything except for our truck. I pee on the stick, it's positive. We set off and travel up the coast and I have my wild pregnancy in the woods. If anyone has the ability to completely leave all their responsibilities behind and go out into nature during their first pregnancy, I would do it because it was the most magical experience that I've ever had, really.
Hi, women. Before we dive in today, I need to name something important. This episode, along with all episodes that you will hear until our winter break in mid-December, was recorded before my birth, prior to mid-August. Since then, our family has walked through the unimaginable. Our son was stillborn, and we are in deep mourning. As these shows air, you'll hear and see me pregnant, which now feels incredibly painful and weird, given that you are holding the sacred knowledge of what came after. So please forgive the dissonance. These stories still deserve to be shared and heard. We welcome your prayers, your loving thoughts, and your support as we navigate this spiral of such deep grief. I hope you find resonance and nourishment in this conversation today. Thank you. If you are like most of my listeners, you are devouring these episodes, and you're probably wishing that you could speak to the women that come on this show, learn from them, even get to know them in real life, right? Well, I would like to invite you into my inner circle. It's called The Lighthouse. The Lighthouse is my highly exclusive online membership, and it's where most of the women on this podcast are hanging out. It's by far the best social media platform on the internet. It's highly curated by yours truly, and our team personally vets every single member coming in to ensure the highest caliber community imaginable. I'm talking a full feed of free birth announcements every day, engaging in intellectual conversation about everything taboo under the sun, a ton of group calls every month to connect and be in circle, not to mention the now 7-year-old matriarch search engine that will quickly replace your Google searching. We only open our doors 4 times a year, and half that time we only open it to those on the wait list. Add your name to the list in the show notes below and consider taking your place among us brilliant, sovereign, wild women, because it's just simply better when we're all together. See you on the inside, sis. Welcome to Freebirth Society. I'm Emily Saldea, and this is where we break the spell of medicalized birth, remember what's been forgotten, and rise together into our birthright to live, birth, and mother as sovereign women. All right. Welcome, Julia.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for being here and offering your stories to this show. I feel like we've been orbiting each other for a couple of years now. Have you been in the Lighthouse?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. And you were at MRF and we've DM'd a little. So yeah, that's my reference point. So all I know is you're a Montana gal who had both of her births and pregnancies outside the system. So I want to hear it all. Like how did that come to be that you, before you were ever even pregnant, were already so aligned with this way of life?
Yeah, so it really did not start out that way at all. The way I was raised, my mom's a medical doctor, my sister's in medical research.
Oh, wow.
I was, totally ingrained in this idea of like the authority figure in all medical stuff. And when I look back on it, I try to have compassion for myself because I said and thought all the things like, if I get a cesarean, then I won't be ruined down there. And I want all the drugs that they want to give me. Like, why would I ever not want just every drug? And motherhood's going to ruin my life and my body and my finances. And that was like my mindset going into like adulthood and into that period of like fertile years, you know? And then what ended up happening was my sister had my niece, right? And I went up to see her in Minnesota. And I came home and I told my husband at the time, like, we don't have to worry. All of that stuff, like, we don't have to worry. Babies are, it's so beautiful. It's so wonderful. Like, let's just forget all of that because I'm just seeing her with her baby and it was great. But then those conversations and trying to push into that frame of life, like we got divorced then 2 years later.
Ah,
Yeah, because it just wasn't right.
did your sister have a positive birth?
Well, she had a planned C-section for breech presentation,
Gotcha.
which in my mind at the time was
Right. It didn't necessarily shake you out of the indoctrination, but it just like showed you that it could be beautiful.
yeah, I just went from like I want to be a mother, but all this negative programming to like I'm gonna find a way to deal with that stuff because I was just in love with the love that they had, you know? So it was nice. So then when you have a divorce, right? The question was, who am I now? It was my high school sweetheart. We had been together for literally half of my life.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I started asking that question and it led to listening to like Root Wild Yourself podcast and going down an herbalism route and like a complete, like my brain was just getting rewired and I was opening my mind up to a lot of possibilities that I had been closed off to previously. And then 2020 happened and I met my now partner and the father of my children at an underground Halloween party. And he immediately kind of like opened the door for that by saying, you know, parenthood is absolutely the highest calling for human beings. There's nothing higher. I'm looking for a wife. I want a family. Did you know that your womb is a sacred portal to another dimension? And I was like, I like this. I'm into this. You know, this is
All right, man, listen up. This is the way you get a cool chick. So funny.
right. And so then, you know, stopped feeling aligned with being on the pill. I decided though that I still wasn't really comfortable taking responsibility for my own fertility. So I did get an IUD and I had one of my first kind of negative experiences in the medical system because I went in and I said, I don't want a hormonal one. And I know there's all kind of problems with the copper one, but I was just like, no hormones. That's where I'm going with this. And we get all set to do the procedure. And she's like, oh, you know, I already have the Moreno one or whatever they call it. It's already unwrapped and you'd have to like go down into the basement to like get the copper one. And then this one would go to waste. And I recommend this one anyway. So let's just put this one in.
Mm.
Yeah. And so I let her, which, yeah, I totally let her put the hormonal one in because I was just like,
Oh my God.
yeah. And I came away from that like really feeling like it's like a yucky feeling. And I didn't like, obviously,
Totally.
nobody likes the process, but I like it was giving me memories of like other times when I haven't loved things that happened, you know,
Mhm.
not worth getting into, but I'm sure everybody knows what I mean. And so I was just like driving home, like, oh, icky, icky.
Mhm.
So then,
Self-betrayal feels bad.
right.
It should feel bad. It's like the flag, you know, even if we don't do anything about it right there, we can, you know, obviously in hindsight, really go, oh, that's what that felt like.
Right. Right. So that didn't last long. I didn't want it in long. And I was with, you know, the person that we decided fairly quickly, like, okay, you know, because my first son was born at the end of 2022. So there's not a lot of time between us meeting and, you know, all of this. So I decided to get it taken out and sort of like a day or two later, I'm like, I'm going to learn about birth, right? Because we were saying things kind of silly, like, well, we don't have to start trying just because you're not on birth control anymore. But then we were not taking any steps to not try. And I knew, you know, where that was going to lead. And I wanted it to lead there anyway, even though we weren't like admitting that we were trying. So I just went to Spotify and was like, pregnancy. And then up pops, Free Birth Society podcast and, a few others. But I remember like the picture at the time was like the glorious image of you with your hands in the air, on the beach. And I was just like, okay, I had no idea what free birth was or anything like that. And so I started listening to the stories and I was so moved. It cracked my heart open and it was another like veil lifted from my eyes. I listened to those stories. I was like, oh my gosh. And just story after story on top of, the Plant Path podcast and the Rewild Yourself and, all of this like change that I was going through, just my brain was completely, like I said, being rewired. And like I would be in my car and at my desk and I would be like moved at work, and I would be moved to tears like when I would hear the music start up for the Free Birth Society podcast because it was just speaking like so deeply to me. And I was learning a lot too, because I didn't know what a cervical check was. I didn't know, anything like that. And being raised by a doctor, I had heard actually a lot of the same sort of like medical midwife. Like my mom has a lot of things that she likes to kind of poke like at medical midwifery about. So I was always like, I'm like, what even is a midwife? What do they do? And it kind of was an interesting puzzle piece to fit together with like what she had told me.
And what kind of doctor is your mom?
Family practice.
Okay.
So she's done, lots of deliveries and things like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I was listening to the podcast and getting really inspired. And not only with birth, with motherhood. Like these women that you talk to, they love being mothers. And I had never been exposed to people loving being mothers before.
Wow.
And alternative lifestyles too. Lots of women and so I was like, well, that's really interesting. And then I started to kind of get influences from other places in my life. Like I had a coworker who was going to have a home birth and she never came back to work, which I think is cool. And another coworker who was born at home. So I came to my partner and I was like, hey, the wildest thing in the world, this girl that I know, she's going to give birth at home. And then she gets to be at home and she can like sit on her couch and she can go to her bed. And isn't that amazing? And there's something called a birth pool. And I don't know what that means, but she's going to have one. And he just kind of looks at me casually. I think he was cooking. He goes, oh, I catch my babies. And I was like, okay, what is catch? What do you mean? And then a couple days later, I'm like, listen, I don't think we should have anybody there probably unless it's the right person because of the things that I was learning. I was like, so we just have to make really, really sure that, and I told him a couple stories that I had heard on the podcast and he was just like, nobody, huh? And then we kind of talked about like his grandma. We talked about a couple close female friends that we had. And we were just kind of like, well, we'll just see, if there is a such thing as a right person when it comes to it. And then at the same time,
I love you guys setting the bar though, that it's like, yeah, we're totally open to being well supported and da-da-da-da, but it has to feel right. It has to be the right person. Like imagine if that was the bar.
Right? I mean, hopefully in the future, right? I hope because one of my children is a daughter and I really hope for her that she finds that. And I hope it's me. But if it's not, I hope that she tells me to go, kick rocks while she's giving birth, But anyway, so this is all happening. We're having these conversations and like linked in with that is this idea of like, we're not aligned anymore with anything about the life that and if we're going to have kids, like, why are we in Sacramento, California? Why am I, going to work at a corporate job every day? Why is he, in California it's really difficult. He's like a trade worker, like construction, woodworking, stuff like that. And there's no real prospects for that. You can work for someone else's construction company or you can pay like an insane amount of money to try to have all the insurances. And, so we're looking at that and we're like, so we're going to have daddy daycare and I'm going to be a corporate like ladder climber and we're going to live in Sacramento. And it was just like, nothing, no. Well, what do we do about it? Right. So we decided what we have to do is move into an RV and go travel because we don't know what we want to do instead. So, like this way we can find out. So we like liquidate everything, sell all our stuff, sell my house, sell, everything except for our truck. And we bought this 1999 Prowler, like thing that didn't even have a pop out because we were trying to save money. So it's just like a tin can. We use it to store like grain now. But but we were like, oh, that's totally fine because, and so we do that. And I'm packing up my bathroom to get ready to move. And I see an old pregnancy test. And I had had a little bit of bleeding, but it was implantation bleeding. And I was kind of like, that was a suspicious. And I was learning about FAM and learning about cycles and stuff also through the podcast, a little bit here and there. Like Nancy came on and had that one really awesome episode where she kind of went over stuff like that. I think it was Nancy. And so I'm like, well, it was kind of a suspicious period. Let's like see, and so I pee on the stick and it's positive. And we're going to leave the day after 2 days from then. We're getting in the camper to leave. So I tell him, he's like all excited and we're like super pumped up that we're going to do this on the road. And we set off and travel up the coast. And I have my wild pregnancy in the woods. We lived in the national park system. Or not park, the forest. National can do all the free camping out there. You just roll into any national forest anywhere that you can fit. And it was so nice. So I was just walking every day in the woods and going down to all these creeks and drinking fresh water and getting fresh air. And we could go anywhere we wanted. We went to the coast, we went inland, we did all this amazing stuff. And I joined the membership, which is now called the Lighthouse. And so I would make these pilgrimages once a month to go to the village prenatals. Like no matter how far we were from service, no matter what we were doing, I was like, we're getting in the car, we're going to go find a coffee shop, and I was able to have just an incredible network of people. Those were so great, going through like the meditation to plan your dream birth, which mine, I love it when people say that theirs turned out exactly like it, but mine didn't.
Yeah, mine either.
At all. It was so fun. I also met another friend she was traveling and she was pregnant with her first and she was going down into Mexico while we were headed up, towards, we were going to go to Alaska, but we never made it because we stayed in Montana. And so I met her and I still talk to her to this day and someday we'll meet, but she's like my greatest.
You met her through the Lighthouse?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, I love that.
It was so cool because instantly we were like connected and we are like so like soul sisters.
Oh,
and we were doing the same thing, traveling in opposite directions. And then now she lives in Canada. It's only like an 8-hour drive. So I think eventually we'll do it. But anyway, so I was going to the village prenatals and enjoying that and kind of really keeping to myself. And thank goodness, because the amount of like outside influences that were trying to get at me, and I could just be like, we're about to lose service. Bye. Look, because it was a struggle with my mom, right? Being a doctor. I think she thought that she could like scare me into like following the path. And so there were some really like difficult conversations that we had to have. But ultimately, I was able to get the support that I needed from the group and the space that I needed in the forest, and nature is such a good like way to, I could just go and like anything on my mind, just like let it go. And it feels like there's so much receptivity out in nature to take that from you. So I definitely recommend, and I don't like to make recommendations, but if anyone has the ability to completely like leave all their responsibilities behind and go out into nature during their first pregnancy, I would do it because it was the most magical experience that I've ever had, really, to be able to do that. And I didn't, at the time, I was sort of like, oh, this is just life. This is great. But now I realize having my child and knowing how it is when you have a child and you have, responsibilities going into the next pregnancy, that this was a really, really special time, an opportunity to do that. So yes, I did have fears, but when I went into it and when I did I also got the complete guide. So when I was doing the journaling prompts and everything, I was able to realize that my fears were just fear of being wrong, fear of being misguided, fear that I was like, just, because I would be treated like by my mom, but not only by her, by a lot of different people, treated like I just was naive and I just didn't know what I was doing. And I was just stumbling around blindfolded, running into walls, was kind of what people treated me like. I felt like that's what they thought I was doing.
I mean, the premise of the medical cult is like, if you aren't on the track complying, you're stupid. Like there's just this like inherent embedded inferiority when and it comes out like you're reckless, you're irresponsible, but it's that you're like doing it wrong, which is so ironic, right? Because most women are blindly following the system, which is inherently harmful, and they're doing it so unconscious. There's an obvious argument there that would be maybe more wrong if right and wrong existed, which it doesn't. But I feel you, and I think that's a very, very common way to be treated when you stray.
Yeah. Thankfully, the yes was so strong. I'm not someone who has felt in my life like very, very connected to intuition. I have always been sort of like the good girl, rule follower person. But the yes was so, so strong for me about this that when people would say stuff like that to me, I would kind of clam up and I would think like, oh God, like, am I like wrong? Am I wrong? Am I wrong? And then I would have a moment to myself and it would actually flip and I would get so angry and I'd be like, are they kidding me? Like yada, 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 yada. And I talked my floor partner's ear off like, can you believe that they said this? And can you believe, and this is what's really going on, and I was able to completely flip it and kind of like rile myself up into like a state of like completely rejecting and even moving further away whenever anyone would say something like that to me. And thankfully, I was able, like, I do still have a good relationship with my mom, but there were times in there when I really didn't know if we were going to be able to get to that point. Because like one time she said to me, you're going to kill that baby if it's a footling breech.
Wow.
Because she said that they physically cannot come out that way.
Wow.
And I was just like, she's like, it's just physics and you just don't know physics. And I can show you like a model of like, how it would be impossible. And I don't actually really care about that compared to hearing from real women who have done it, like.
Right. Did she realize how wrong she is now?
Well, I told her about the podcast and she literally said that she thinks that people are probably making stories up in order to get on the internet.
That just
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
And so it's like, oh, and there was a lot of that went on.
What about the birth workers who have seen footling breech? We're all just lying because it's not possible.
I guess it's just that great to be on a podcast that you just need to I don't know. And then there's the other aspect where like I respect my mom and I actually saw her model to me taking care of your own children because she was a doctor. So it was all through allopathy, but we didn't go to the doctor. She took care of us, and she did a great job. And so I also don't want to sling mud at her life's work. So she would say these things and I felt a little bit like a punching bag. And I was a little bit like, am I going to keep putting up with this? But one piece of advice that I did get through the membership was I lied about my due date. I told her it was a month later than it was. So we were still having these conversations. And literally like the night before I went into labor, she was on the phone giving me a hard time about something. And I was just like, Mom, I'm going to go eat dinner. Like I'm not giving birth now. So we'll talk about this later. And then I did give birth. And the next time I talked to her, I was like, look, here's your grandson,
So what was it about free birth that drew you and a wild pregnancy versus a midwife at home?
Well, and I don't want to be offensive to midwives who are medically licensed. I know it's probably okay here, but so I don't mean this about like midwives in general. This is specifically medically licensed. I don't really understand why if I was going to have somebody medical at my birth, why wouldn't I just get an OB? Like, why wouldn't I get the most medical, the person who's the most trained,
Well, because the midwife will come to your home or your RV. The doctor won't.
Yeah. That's true. But I guess it just felt like one or the other. Like, I guess I'm kind of more of a like all or nothing type of person. Like, if I'm going to go the medical route, I'll just go the medical route. And if I'm going to be at home, then it would have to be the right person. Like we were talking about before, the right support person, which to me isn't, I never really interviewed any midwives or anything because the right person especially in an RV, but in general for me, was never going to be someone that I hired. Like I was listening to the podcast and I was kind of like, I just don't see how I could get from hiring a person to do a job to like what I think of as the right kind of support, which wouldn't be that hired help. The right person for me would be more like if I had a really close, like a grandmother, or I don't know if that is making sense really.
No, I know what you mean. I mean, I felt that way in my first birth. It never occurred to me to hire anybody, but I wanted my sister there and a friend of mine who was very, very dear to me. And actually another friend was present in the beginning part of the labor. Unfortunately, her flight flew out that night, so she was only there for like the first half. But like having women that were my sisters felt really good for my first birth. But the idea of like hiring never even occurred to me. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it's so private, it's so intimate. And it's also, I think for a lot of people or a lot of women, it's like not that heady. It sounds like how you're describing it. It's just like not that heady because this is a really big pivot, out of corporate Sacramento, sell everything, you're divorced. Like that's a big pivot to RV, a guy who worships your sacred womb, wild pregnancy, Freebirth Society podcast, rejecting your family's frame of all of this. It's a big pivot. And at the same time, it's like, duh. It's like so simple.
Right.
So many of you have asked me over the years about the choice to not register your baby after birth, no birth certificate, no social security number, and how to still get a passport. Well, I'm thrilled to finally have someone I can wholeheartedly refer you to, Freebirthing mother and sovereignty mentor, Veda Ray. Veda doesn't just talk about this, she lives it. And now she's teaching other parents exactly how to welcome and raise a truly sovereign baby. Head over to vedarevival.com and start your journey.
Okay, so you're pregnant and you're cruising along, and like, what else do you want to say about the preparation of your first ever pregnancy being this way, which is like, in our culture, as absolutely extreme and radical as you could possibly get? The fact that you were just allowing yourself to be pregnant, that you were focused on spending time in nature, connecting with your partner, exploring your land. It's so laughable that like you doing the most integrated, healthiest version of pregnancy is something that like makes people's brains go inside out. So what else? Like, how did you manage the fears and the what ifs and how much to know and blah, blah, blah? And did you prep to birth in the RV?
Yeah. So I decided that pretty much I was going to learn what I needed to learn from the complete guide and listening to the podcast. Because if you listen to all of them, there's most scenarios out there. So I felt pretty confident that if anything would come up, I would at least have a frame of reference for, possibilities, not what was going to happen in my case, but, a lot of different possibilities, a lot of different iterations. And the complete guide, I watched like every module like 3 or 4 times so that I would be sure that I would like really at least have an understanding of the stages and some of the common things. And also like just to be able to dispute in my head when someone would drop some fear on me. Like, okay, like I can now kind of at least know what a rebuttal could be. And then I could decide what I feel about it. But for me, as far as the fears go, like I said, it was just a fear of being wrong. Like my yes to it was so deep that if I was like, let go of the idea of that you're afraid that you're going to have to tell the world that this went really poorly for you. Are you actually afraid? And I just wasn't. And I don't really know why. I think a lot of it has to do with having the space to be out in nature. I think sometimes I would just say out loud, like I'd be sitting with the trees in the creek and I would just say, well, what if this or that? And it's just saying it out loud, like it would dissipate. And, and I loved that. But yeah, I did plan to live in the RV. So what ended up happening was we were initially going to try to book it to Florida to get somewhere warm. And I was going to like try to get a dolphin to come swim with me, like when I was super pregnant or giving birth or something like that. That was my plan. But then when we came to where we now live in Montana, I got this other intuitive feeling, which I don't, like I said, I don't get those that much. So when I do get them, like I got the yes to Freebirth, and then I got just like, don't leave Montana. And I'm like, well, it's September. How am I going to not leave Montana? Like I live in a rickety old like trailer. I can't stay in Montana. But, met my best friend worked at a fruit stand on the side of the road. We met her. She said, go up this mountain. I heard that they're like, parceling out land up there. Found a piece of land that was everything that we wanted. Bought a different trailer that has like a pop out and had better insulation than our tin can. Set my husband up with the like, okay, it was October 4th when we moved in, and Bruce ended up being born on December 3rd. So it was like, 1, 2, 3, go. Get it ready. I'm going to go for a walk. And it was and so we didn't have a well, but we have amazing neighbors. So we were hoofing buckets of water from our neighbors, but at least we had water. And you can put it in a tank. So for anyone who, just as a side note, wants to live off grid, I think a trailer is a great thing to do because you can have all of the amenities if you take a little time to do the prep work. Like we have a 50-gallon tank, so you can have 50 gallons of water and it'll come out of a faucet and you can heat it with propane. It's like all right there. It's really not that hard. It's not like, I love the people who live in yurts, but that's a lot harder, than living in a travel trailer that has everything, in it.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so we set all that up in a hurry. I remember that it was snowing the day that we put in our wood burning stove. And so like the snow is coming in the hole that we like cut, and I'm like really pregnant. I'm just like, I hope that this is a good idea, because like I actually have to consider the idea that maybe like we will die out here if we're not smart about this.
Oh God. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the whole.
I mean, a Montana winter off grid is no joke. That's pretty intense.
Yeah. Yeah, it did. It got down to -30 that first year that Bruce was born.
How did you guys do, like warmth wise and utilities wise, resources?
Yeah, so we have propane that we can use to run the furnace, and we have a wood stove. And so we put blankets up over all the windows and doors, and we ran the wood stove, and also used the heater. And
We're warm, huh?
Yeah, and I mean, it's small space, which is really helpful.
Yeah.
And I mean, it did, what would have to happen is that, Brandon would stay up until like as late as he could at night running the wood stove. And then he would wake me up and I would get up in the morning and run it if I could,
So does a propane truck come to you?
No, it's carrying the tanks down. We have the ones that are like 7 gallons or 5 gallons. And so you just load the truck bed up and then drive down to the gas station and fill them and drive back.
Yeah, that's a real way of life. You gotta be on your shit to not run out of that.
Yeah. The hardest part was like keeping the water not frozen, but also, like that's the 5-gallon bucket life.
Mm-hmm. So tell us your birth story.
Yeah. So with Bruce, I had gone on a walk the night, like earlier in the day, the night that labor started for me. And I remember that I was just like hands on my knees, kind of like swaying back and forth, like, oh, this walk is tough, And I like came in and sat down and I was like, oh, and this belly is heavy, really heavy. And then I went to brush my teeth and I got a trickle of water coming out, and I was so excited. And I grabbed my journal and I messaged that friend that I told you that I was talking to. I'm like, it's happening. Like, this is so cool. And then I went to sleep. And at about 1:30 in the morning, I woke up and I knew I wasn't going to be able to go back to sleep. So I came out and I was trying to I had planned on giving birth on the converted, like the table that converts into a bed, you know, and I couldn't get it. I was like struggling with it. So I woke up Brandon and I was like, hey, can you like make my bed for me, get it all? And he was like, yeah, sure. And then he started the fire up and I was just trying to find any position where I could be comfortable, but I really couldn't get it. I remember being sort of like restless, like moving around all the positions, standing up, side, you know, back, hands and knees, like, and nothing, because no one could prepare me. Like, you hear all about how much it hurts, but I was like, oh no, this is really, really painful. And like so deep inside of you. Like I had never been able to like envision like a pain that comes from like the core depths of
Yeah.
your body. Like, so I was just pushing out of my mind the thought of like, I can't do this for multiple days. Like I will like really be in trouble if this takes that long. And, you know, hanging off the lip of the pop out was nice. And, just kind of like trying to get comfortable. And, you know, it was okay. In my memory, I remember kind of whimpering and like crying when a sensation would start like, no, no, not again. I need a break. Like, oh, but my husband says like, no, 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 you totally had it. But I remember like praying to the goddess, please, like, give me just 2 more minutes in between this. And so it was kind of like a bit of a shock for me. But after a while, I made my way like to laying flat out on the floor. And I looked up and I saw my bed. And I had intended not to go on my bed at all because I was afraid of like getting it dirty and I wanted it to be available for me. But I was like, that's where I need to be. And just to kind of back up a little bit, we had planned. So Bruce was born on the 3rd. The 4th is my birthday. And we had planned for my birthday to go into the city and get supplies like do laundry, towels, figure out how we were going to cut the cord, all that stuff. And we never got that chance. So we didn't even have a clean towels. We didn't have a clamp or any idea how we were going to do anything, which of course didn't matter to me at that time. But it wasn't like we had mattress covers and I was going to get, all like those kind of amenities and stuff. But then I looked up from the floor where I was laying just like, and I saw my bed and it was like, oh, this is where I need to go. And I'm like, okay. So Brandon gave me his bath towel, thankfully, that he had been using. And I laid on a towel in the bed. And it was so nice. I laid back and I closed my eyes and I let my consciousness just completely disappear. And then my body started to push. And so I would like close my eyes and rest and allow myself to travel the astral plane. And then my body would push and I would kind of sit up and like naturally sort of bear down. And then when the contraction was over, just flat back again, eyes closed. And I did that. I don't remember how long I did it for, but just darkness and silence. And this is another reason why I really am glad that we didn't have anyone else there, because I don't understand how anyone could ever give birth other than complete silence and darkness. Like, because that was, the best. So I was doing that until all of a sudden, like my consciousness came back and I was kind of like, I think I need to go to the bathroom. So I shuffled over to the bathroom and I sat on the toilet and I got scared. I remember being like, how long has it been since he moved? People talk about kicking and wiggling. And I was like, I don't think that I know that he's moved and, what's going on and all of this stuff. And so I told Brandon, I was like, I'm scared. I don't know. Like, and he had told me like, okay, well, why don't we pick a couple of your mantras? And so I had made little mantra drawings while we were on the road, and I picked out 2 of them. I trust the process and I release control. And so he sat in front of me and I sat on the toilet and we just said those over and over and over again until that's all that was left. I kind of like used them to push out the other thoughts of, clearly this baby's dead because I haven't felt him move. And so that thought was replaced by I trust the process and I release control. And then I decided to touch, like I reached inside and I touched his head. And that's probably the best moment of my entire life. I remember just like being so, and then all of a sudden it was like a spark of energy. And I was like, I can do this. And I looked up and through the window that I could see from the bathroom, there was, the sun had come up, the trees were there. It was like a bright, sunny, like fresh snow day. And it just was like, oh, the world is beautiful and I can do this. And it's time to like buck up and get going again. So I waddled out of the bathroom back onto like my chosen birth spot. And I was trying really hard to do a cool position, like a hands and knees or like a squat or like, something awesome, like the warrior pose, because that's what I had in my mind that I was going to give birth. But at a certain point, I remember being on my hands and knees and my arms were just tired. So I just like flopped over onto my back. And I was like, you know what? I guess I'm doing this on my back because that's what felt right. And it felt good for the pushing too. But I was like, there was a small voice in my head, like, oh, come on, you're going to give birth on your back. Like when you have
It's fine as long as the woman chooses it. Lots of women choose to give birth on their back.
It was pretty awesome, actually, because it does allow like full relaxation when you're not in a contraction.
For some people.
Right. For me.
Not for plenty.
For me, it's
yeah, totally. That's great.
Yeah. So I was pushing and I could feel his head coming down and then retracting. And I was like really, really desiring to like go ahead and finish up the process. I was like, come on, baby, like, let's do it. So I was pushing pretty hard actually. And intentionally, it wasn't like on the bed was the time when my body took over and I wasn't trying. This like was like effort. I was like putting in 110% effort trying to do it. Eventually his head did come out and he had a nuchal hand. And I'm told that he grabbed my husband's finger with his little hand. And I was like, oh, that's cute. But both of my babies did have, we'll get to it later, but the other one had a hand up too. And I was just like, the absolute most painful part of this whole birth process is when their head is out and the rest of them isn't. And I was like, oh, we have to get like going on this. So I tried to push without a contraction and that didn't do anything. And then like, I got a bunch of like advice from my mother later that like, you can't do that. You can't push without, and like, I don't know, it didn't hurt anything. But then finally the contraction came and the best feeling that there is when their body just, it came out all at one time. It was awesome. And then he was there and he was blue. So we grabbed like more of our bath towels and put them on him and put him on my chest and watched him pink up. And it was so magical to just look at my baby and meet him and count all his little toes and fingers. And I was so happy. And then about 45 minutes later, as we had discussed, Brandon starts talking to me about the placenta. And it doesn't really come out. And I'm kind of like, I'm like doing like performative thank yous to it. Like I'm saying thank you, but I'm not really. Like it was just like, this is what you're supposed to do, And I end up kind of like delaying that it was about 2 hours and I still haven't got it out. And then our neighbors roll up the road to our house and get out and knock on the door. And they had come by because Brandon had said, like, will you help me move a foundation, like a shed foundation? And of course, when they decide to come by is when I've just given birth, and I'm like fully new everything else. And so Brandon's like, oh, I can tell them to go away. But like in reality, we did have a bunch of our really valuable, necessary stuff just piled outside, like under an easy up that was collapsing and being held up by 2x4s. So we needed this shed. And I'm in that state, like, I mean, you've talked about it on a bunch of episodes. I didn't I should have probably said like, no, tell them to come back tomorrow at least, but I was like, sure, fine, whatever. So this woman who I have only met once through a car, like, hi, how are you? I'm the new neighbor, is sitting in a chair in like the living room with me. And I have my baby and I'm fully nude and my placenta's still in. Yeah. While Brandon and Charlie go to move this foundation.
Okay.
And that did not help the placenta thing. Like she tried to she was like, it's fine. And I tried to push it out while she was there. And it was just bad news. Like,
That's crazy.
yeah. So then they did leave and somehow it becomes to where it's been 5 hours since the placenta is still in. And, luckily I was in the lighthouse at that point. And I remember you had made a very, very long post detailing placenta. I don't want to say like protocol, but just like your thoughts of like all the things that might cause it to not come out and what to do. And so I had Brandon read that to me word for word. And I listened to it. And it was all the stuff of like, okay, obviously I had an interruption. So that's going to be part of it. Do I actually want the placenta to come out? I'm afraid of, the act of it coming out, of like the feeling or just like not wanting to give birth to anything else or not wanting to be done with the process or all of these things. So I was considering all of that. And I was like, okay, I've got all that in my mind. Let's cut the cord. Brandon, you can hold Bruce. I'm going in the bathroom and I'm not coming out until the placenta is in a bowl. So that's what I did. I just had like the determination of like, it's time now. Like, this is like, I'm done screwing around. I'm done pretending to, spiritually thank the placenta until she comes out. Like, she's coming out because I say so, And so we did. We cut the cord. We tied it with a shoelace because like I said, we didn't have anything else. But that I think actually I liked better than for my second birth, we had a clamp, and the shoelace was awesome. So I go into the bathroom and I just thought of each thing like, okay, I've had this interruption, accept it. That's how it is. That doesn't get to stop me. I really actually don't want something else coming out of my vagina right now, but I have to accept that. So I'm not going to let that stop me. Am I ready to be done with this process of birth? Like, yes, I am. Like, I am ready. And so then I did cord traction, and when the cord would become taut, I would let it go again and then kind of try to like push because I wasn't having any contractions per se to like help me get it out. And so I did that. I think I probably took 20 minutes and finally, it all came out, and then I immediately peed on it. So I didn't eat it or anything like that. We buried it under a tree later. And yeah, I went back out. I got my baby settled up comfortably with some blankets, and he had his first latch then, not until 5 hours later, because I had been so distracted by everything that I had kind of thought like he was suckling at it. And I was like, is this right? Like, is this okay? And then when after the placenta and I could finally relax and everything was like much more chill, then Brandon helped me and we into like a position where then he latched, and you just know when they actually start latching. And I was really relieved at that point that those two things, the placenta and the latch, so then it was go to town and get me a pizza. And that's what he did. And yeah.
Mm.
So that was the first story.
I can't believe those people came by. Oh my God, it's funny. But that's life, I was thinking when you were sharing that part that you have this really intimate reference point of disruption and the potential cost of disruption. And then you think about someone birthing in the hospital, that's nothing. That's nothing, like two people that aren't even strangers that came over to help you is nothing compared to who didn't touch you, compared to just the average experience of third stage in the hospital. It's just, wow. Anyway.
No, that's true.
Yeah, just the cost of that. So
What is the age gap between Bruce and next pregnancy?
So Kate was born at the end of September, so she's like 2 months shy of 2 years. Like, so he was gonna turn 2 in 2 months.
Oh, so pretty close.
Yeah, yeah,
So he was only 1 when you got pregnant.
yeah. Mhm.
Oh,
He was
dang.
basically exactly 1. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, what do you want to say about your first year of motherhood and then moving into that second pregnancy? And I'm so interested to hear how that tracks with like the development of your land and yeah, just like who you're becoming because this is such a pivot from your old life.
Yeah. So we our mantra is kind of like food production is the first priority here. So we were all about, get chickens, get a milk
Yeah.
cow, start a garden, and all of that stuff had to happen, pretty much right away. I did observe my 60 days, and that I will say was super important. All the bone broth until I couldn't pretty much stand the thought of bone broth when he would go to like this up. I'm like, oh no. So, enough, right? Like that's how you've had a good amount, I think. And I didn't do anything for 60 days. And so that really set us up, I think, well to move forward. My healing was great. And then I just jumped into the homesteading life, with both feet and with him in like a little cart all bundled up. And so for that first year, it really is just the start of everything from scratch, another huge learning curve. But we really want the babies. And I'm 37 and, I kind of feel like, who knows, but I feel like I'm going to have 5 babies. So I'm not really trying to space them out just because, like, on the one hand, if you want 5 babies, like, I don't know if I want to do little babies for 20 years. So I want to, like, we'll just do that phase now. So yeah, I would say more or less to have her tight spacing. We never, did anything to try to space them. And we're just, doing the beautiful cycle. Like you take the chicken poop and the cow poop and you put it in the garden and then, the cycle of life. And we dug a well and, it was really, really busy, but really, really fun. And then another wild pregnancy with her, like, I remember like just like during the summer, like canning over my big belly, looking at my tallow that I'm rendering, like, okay, and it's so cool. And toddlers are hilarious about it. Like, when he's like playing with my belly and telling me, like, like he didn't understand. He was too young to understand like that there's like a sibling in there, baby. I would ask him if and he's like, yeah. And then yeah, and I knew he completely didn't understand. So it was great. I don't know. Is there anything else you are curious about? This time I'm a lot more connected to the community. So I didn't really mention, but there was some concerns. We ended up going to the Mormon church for Bruce's like proof of pregnancy and like as like a public figure to get the birth certificate. And then this time we had more connections. I didn't have to worry about like that before was so stressful. Brandon got dressed up in like a suit and went down to ask him if they would do this for us. And now it was sort of like, this is the home birth lady. Like someone's got to give her proof of pregnancy and live birth, and it was all very chill the second time around. But anyway, so I have another wild pregnancy and this time, instead of I think I was expecting again, which a lot of people do. I'm like, oh, he was, at 38 weeks last time. So 38 weeks came and I treated it like it was my 40 weeks. And then Kate came at like 41 and a half. And so I had that like eternity between when I thought I was supposed to give birth and when I really did. But it was the same thing again. Middle of the night, Brandon was up doing something. And then he comes into bed and I kind of stretch because I'm cuddling Bruce and I stretched out and heard like an elastic band pop sound. And I was like, ooh, there was a small voice in the back of my head that I remember that said like, that's probably the cord. And I'm like, no, it's not the cord snapping. That wouldn't even make that sound. That doesn't make any sense. It's definitely, and then the trickle came down my leg of the amniotic fluid. And again, I went to sleep and woke up in the middle of the night knowing that I wasn't going to be able to sleep anymore. And it was September. So I thought like maybe I'll be able to give birth outside. So I like walked outside and it's so gorgeous. Like we get such beautiful stars and everything. And I was like, yeah, okay. And I have a mattress that like my big pregnant self was laying on all summer, like just laying out outside. And then my dogs, we have livestock gardening dogs, and they started like doing their patrolling and barking like in a circle around our house. And I was just like, oh, back inside. Like, definitely not gonna be able to relax out here while I'm like, there's whatever in the darkness that they're talking to. So I come back inside and I try to start making some tea, but this time the contractions are like I have to go down on my knees like every single contraction right from the time that I get inside, which was maybe like 20 minutes from getting up. And so I don't get the tea made, but I hear Bruce starting to wake up and I go in and I like trying to be nice, but kind of cranky, like I'm giving birth now. Like I'm in labor. Like this is happening. Like, I really wish that he wasn't waking up. And Brandon was like, okay, like go back out to living room. Like I'll take care of Bruce. Don't worry about it. And he actually was able to put him to sleep, which is not normal, but this was like the magic of the birth portal is that he said like, dude, I think you should stay asleep for this. And spoiler alert, completely asleep the entire time. And so Brandon comes back out. He makes my tea for me. And this time I'm focusing a little bit more on like the going with the flow. I never found like the blissful portal, but I was trying to like I was really focused on like breath work, breathing. And every single time a contraction would come, the only place for me was on my knees in front of the couch, like laying with my head on the cushions. And I had a pillow underneath me with a towel on it. And I was just like peeing freely or amniotic fluid or whatever. It was like a lot of that. And so that was going on for a while. And this time I wasn't restless. This time it was the one position that would work, every single time on my knees. And so I did end up in the bathroom at one point. And I got up, and I think this might have been my version of transition for this birth because I got up and I felt the heartbreaking need to be with my toddler. I just like, I don't know, it was like longing and just like, it like was like in my heart, like I have to be with him. I need to like be near him. And I was like, well, that's kind of inconvenient because he's sleeping really well right now. Like this is a really dumb idea, but what are you going to do when you have that kind of feeling? Like you can't just be like, no, I don't think I'll do it. So I was like, all right. So I get into bed and I go over and like lay down next to him. And then immediately I'm like, Brandon, help me up. I can't lay down. Like I could not. It was the most horrible feeling ever to be laying down. And so I'm like on my hands and knees and I'm kind of like trying to like pace around on the bed on my hands and knees. And then a contraction just like goes through me like a train on the tracks. It was like, and it was so intense that my entire body froze up. And I was like, no, this is too soon. I can't, like, what the heck was that? Like, it was the most intense contraction I've ever had. And so then another one happens and I am locked against it. Like every muscle and bone in my body is just like, we're not doing this right now. And then I called to Brandon and I'm like, I think the head's coming because I literally felt her head. Like the only way I can think of to describe it is when you're on a roller coaster and it's like clicking up and then you hit that part where it hits the block that stops you. Like I felt her head like slide and like then hit like a, like a part of my body where she was going to have to take a rest moment before moving through, which I think was, and I was like, okay, I think the head's coming. And he was just like, really already? But where's he going to go? It's 26 feet long. So he was in there like pretty much instantly. And another contraction comes.
He's always 2 steps away.
Yeah. And so then another contraction comes and I fought it again. And I knew that her head wanted to come. And I say out loud, I say, I don't know what to do. Because I was so locked against the idea. I thought it was way too soon and it was way too big. It was bigger than any contraction that I had with Bruce. And then I immediately followed it up with like, do not give me any advice. He was like, because I knew what I had said. I simply said it. Yeah, exactly. And then a voice of reason came into my mind, like, well, obviously you're going to push and you're going to give birth to this baby. Like that's, would you rather sit here and do this fighting it? No, like you're gonna get with the program. So I did. And two more pushes, maybe her head came out, and there was that moment of like desperation to get the rest of her out. My least favorite part of birth. And then my favorite part of birth, when her body came out, I was on hands and knees. And that is really a vulnerable position. I remember thinking, again, like, I don't understand how people can give birth in other scenarios, because this is the person that I love and trust the most in my life behind me. And I'm still thinking, like, man, I really wish I wasn't fully displayed like this, and like feeling very, very vulnerable. Which I don't know if maybe that had to do with why I was fighting the contractions, because I didn't like that position, but there wasn't any other position for me to be in. But it was very exposed like that. And I'm, when I'm actually pushing her out, I'm like, I wouldn't say roaring, I would say screaming. I was like, "Ah!" And toddler is just out completely. It was magic. And so then Kate's here. It's a girl, we're hugging and holding her. And I'm, just laying in bed. And then this time for the placenta,
You're just like in the bed next to sleeping Bruce?
yeah, he's up like at the pillows and I'm at the end of the bed.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's funny. I have a couple pictures where we're like, taking selfies with the new baby and he's just passed out.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, something magical about that moment of like, need you to sleep through this, and he just did it. But anyway, so this time Brandon took a little bit of more of an initiative, because I was laying there like, I know I have to do this, but I don't really want to. And he like got things more ready in the bathroom. Like we have a composting toilet, so it's like a bucket, and he put the bowl like on top of the bucket inside the toilet so I wouldn't have to be holding it. And he got a chair and put it next to the toilet so that he could hold Kate and I could still be attached to her. And then he was like, okay, I think that I've got it kind of set up well. And I don't know if it would have been easier the second time anyway, probably, but this was very, very easy. I was able to still hold my baby. I didn't have to worry about the logistics with the bowl, and a more genuine thank you to the placenta, I would say, and then it just came out and was beautiful. And I got to have that experience of holding my baby with the placenta in the bowl, which I had really wanted. And I told him that I wanted that. So I was really grateful that he kind of like stepped up to set up a situation where I would be able to more easily achieve that. Yeah. And then we had some strawberry ice cream, and just like toddler boy, as soon as he heard the ice cream, like, the package, he was up. You open a package around a toddler and then come check it out.
Funny. That's what woke him up.
Yeah. After not me screaming.
Yeah. That's funny. And what was his reaction when he woke up to his baby?
It was very sweet. It was sort of like a little bit shy and also like a little bit wise, and just like, he just kind of was like, yeah, okay. And we're like, here's your sister. And he's like, all right. And
This is my life now.
yeah, but he was a little like, just a little bit like backed off, not really super. He was more quiet than normal as he kind of looked at her and took it all in. And
Pretty big thing to wake up to.
yeah. And I was glad again that we were home for that, that it was just like a really streamlined.
Yeah. Integrated.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that was how long ago? How old is Kate?
About 8 months.
Oh, pretty fresh. So you should be pregnant any day now.
Right? Actually, vacation plans, and they don't want us to have a kid in the huts over the water. I got a vacation canceled on me in 2020 to have a hut over the water in Indonesia, but they won't let you have children in them.
Fun.
And so I'm like, okay, we can't get pregnant, at least until I can be very pregnant while we're there, but I can't.
Yeah.
So we have to time it out just a little bit this time.
But where are the kids going to be?
With a grandparent.
Gotcha. Hell yeah. What island?
It's called Rajat Ampur.
Hmm.
It's off of Sarong.
Nice. So yeah, you can be pregnant. You just can't have a baby.
Yeah.
That sounds worth planning around. Awesome. Well, anything else you want to say before we close?
Yeah. So I think I may have had some prolapsing in my recovery with Kate because I had so much going on as far as like the homestead, and there was a little bit of a conflict between me and Brandon about like he was going to do all the stuff that I normally would do. And so it's like I'm just saying this as a get really clear on whether the person who's going to do your stuff for you is going to do it their way or if they're going to do it the way that you want them to do it.
Well, I can tell you right now, it's not going to be your way.
I know, but I was so mad. I was like, but you're doing this, so you should do
Wait,
it.
you have to say that differently. It's not get clear on if, it's be prepared that, right? That your man is going to keep the house and do your end his way, which will be underwhelming, imperfect, and sloppy.
Right. And in a 26-foot trailer right in front of your face where you're trying to cuddle your baby and you can
Next level. Because at least in a house, you can just like stay in your chambers and not see how dirty the floors are or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So I got up and I started being like, it's okay. I'll milk the cow. She's my cow. It's chill. And it was not chill. Like at one point I went to take a shower and I never looked at it or really thought about it hard, but there was like a fleshy balloon of something that wasn't supposed to be there. And so then I went back to bed, much more serious.
In your vagina. We're not talking about the cow.
Yeah, just my vagina, not exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So then that was a reset for you.
Yeah. So then I went back to bed, and I also had like things that I didn't put on hold that I should have. Like the day after Kate was born, I had a call with a lawyer scheduled about just like some disputes that were going on with the property, and I should have canceled it. And I decided not to. And so I think based on having such a good postpartum with my first, that I was like, no, that was sort of like too much. I sort of created a prison for myself. I'm going to let myself be more relaxed this upcoming time and do what I want to do. But what I wanted to do, it's so easy for that to fall off into what you feel like you have to do and not even really realize it or doing it for. So anyway,
yeah.
Third time's the charm. I'm going to get it really right. The third.
I think like a good guiding question is like, does blank support my healing and my continued psychedelic state and integration? So like maybe a slow walk in the woods, that would be a yes. Maybe sitting in the sunshine might be a yes, but a talk with a lawyer is a hard no. Milking a cow is a hard no, right? Like does it support, because women, I do think my judgment is that some women will take the 40-day thing like really weirdly serious and also be miserable, like at the same, and I'm not suggesting that was you, but I've seen other women, like after whatever 2 weeks, they'll like reach out to me and be like, I am so bored and so like cabin fever, and like, well, fucking go outside. What are you talking about? Like there's no rules, you guys, just do whatever you want. Like what feels good and what supports your integration and that psychedelic state. And it's not ever going to be screens. It's never going to be, right, like the heady stuff. It's going to be the other stuff. But yeah, I hear you. Third time's charm. You'll do it.
Yeah. No, that is correct about the first time. Like I was so like rigid about it that it was to my detriment, I was like, my body's atrophying and I'm just laying here like and then I did it. Yeah. Yeah. But it's an art for sure. So
we're learning. Yeah. We're learning. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I loved hearing your stories.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed telling them.
All right, women, I hope you enjoyed the show today. You can support this podcast by donating to it through the link in the show notes below. And of course, leaving an awesome review on whatever platform you listen on. The more reviews, the more visibility the show gets. So let's spread the good word of free birth. Don't forget, you can watch all of my podcast interviews on YouTube and see the women as they tell their birth and power stories. And you will also find our viral free birth collection of epic raw birth videos on our YouTube channel, so make sure you're subscribed. We always have a lot going on at Free Birth Society, and you can find out about all of it at freebirthsociety.com. And I am at Free Birth Society on Instagram. Please opt into my newsletter below so that you don't miss a thing. We offer courses on free birth, sovereign birth work, as well as one-on-one coaching, women's retreats, so much. Our exclusive private vetted membership, The Lighthouse, is definitely something to check out if you are looking for a community of wise sisters to get guidance from and to meet in real life. Together we rise, sisters. We must speak our stories fully, claim our lives, and support one another. This is the living revolution, and I am so grateful to be in it with all of you. Till next time.